Welcome to In the Black, the podcast that shines a light on resilience, transformation, and the power of reinvention. I'm Araceli, and each week, my co host Shannon and I sit down with incredible women who face some of life's hardest challenges, from personal setbacks to societal obstacles, and have emerged on the other side stronger, driven, and ready to make a difference.
On In the Black, we celebrate these stories of strength and success, diving deep into the journeys of women who turn pain into purpose, adversity into action, and now dedicate themselves to making the world a better place in their own way. They're here to inspire, share hard-earned wisdom, and remind us all that no matter how dark things may seem, life is cyclical and the dawn is coming. So whether you're looking for inspiration, motivation, or just a reminder that change is always possible, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to In the Black.
Our guest today is a woman who has walked through fire and emerged stronger, not just for herself, but for others. Her journey began in a home shadowed by abuse at the hands of her father, a reality that shaped her relationships and left scars she thought would never heal. But instead of letting her past define her, she chose to fight back. Welcome, Gretchen, to today's episode.
Hello, and thank you.
So, Gretchen, can you take us back to a pivotal moment when you faced a really significant challenge in your life? What was happening in your life at the time, and how do you think that impacted you?
Probably the biggest thing for me is when I didn't have a vehicle. My oldest daughter was 6 months old, and her father had strangled me to the point where I passed out and I woke up. And that was probably the first time that I tried to get away from him. And I was like, I've got to leave. And I had just a trash bag and her, and I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do. And luckily, I lived in Kansas City at that time. And I don't know how I met this lady, but I met a lady and we became roommates. And so I apologize. Prior to that, I had to go into a women's victim center. So I stayed in one of their shelter homes for, I don't remember how long, long enough, that gave my daughter and I a place to stay. And then I met this woman, and then her and I became roommates. So that still led me down a dark path. I didn't change, but it was an eye-opening experience for me that at that time that I thought I would change my life, and I just kept spiraling after that. But that was a big moment for me, just having my daughter with me.
So, what emotions did you experience during that period, and how did you manage those feelings?
I didn't. A lot of it was fear, but I think a lot of it was, I call it my Gretchen stubbornness. I think it's stubbornness and just that I wanted my daughter and I to be safe. So safety was a priority, but fear was what my biggest emotion was. I don't think fear really ever left.
Okay. Yeah. What are some things that were spoken to you or about you that really stuck with you in that time, whether they were things from growing up or like things that had shaped the reality that you faced at that moment? What were some things that you heard as far as words?
I didn't really then. I think my biggest thing was trying to run away from everything. So every time I would run somewhere new, I felt like that was a resolution to my issues. So, gosh, girls, it probably took me until my 30s, late 20s. And then that was probably when I realized I needed to start working on myself and doing things for myself instead of running away from the things that kept happening and kept taking me down a dark road or a dark path, if that answers it.
Was that realization due to the fact that you left, with the bag of clothes with your daughter?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she was always, I have to say for my reality and what kept me strong and what kept me going was her. So my oldest daughter was always my little light that was always shining. So, if one situation didn't work, then I'd move to another situation because I was trying to do better for her, provide better, a safer place, provide shelter for her. And I think that's was probably my biggest. As she got older and I started seeing her grow up, I wanted to be a better parent, if that makes sense.
I can absolutely relate to that. I know that
Yeah.
my kids have been a huge motivator for me as
Yeah.
well. At what point did you decide you wanted things to be different, like really different, not repeating that cycle? Was there a
Okay.
specific moment that sparked that change, or was that a gradual realization for you?
My specific moment would be when I met my youngest daughter's dad. So I'm sorry, my youngest daughter. So that was when I was in my later 20s and 30s. And I think just that repeating of my history, things were, and I did have friends along the way, Araceli being one of them too. And I'd had some friends in the past, you know, you're making your own choices. You're choosing to stay in the situation. And that really stuck with me, hearing that, this is your choice and you keep choosing this. And I kept hearing that. So that would probably be something that really resonated with me. I'm like, that reality, I'm like, oh, that's true. I'm miserable because I did choose to do this instead of choosing a different path. And because that resonated with me, and it just kept lingering, I'm like, I've got to make better choices. I have to figure out why I keep making these same mistakes over and over and over again. And so then I had counseling. I had gone, for victims counseling, and I had some good counselors along the way. And they, told me, you live like a child. And I did. I would throw fits. I mean, stupid little fits like a child would throw. I didn't know how to be responsible for money, and that money and credit was important. So I did. That resonated with me, and I didn't want to be like that. So after meeting a really good counselor in my third marriage, really helped me because my youngest daughter's dad was a good man. He was very calm. He was very kind. I'm not saying that we didn't get into arguments. We did, but he wasn't an abuser. He was a gentle man. And when I pushed his buttons, then, then he would get upset with me. And so being in a relationship with him and still having those same mistakes, I'd gone on a trip to see my parents in Arizona, and my youngest daughter was only 2. And I'd made a decision with the counseling and being away from him and getting away from just our living situation that I didn't like, because I felt like there was no resolution to our conversations. Like I would learn something in my counseling session and I would try to take it home. And when I brought it home and we still kept having the same issues and I kept feeling the same way, I'm like, I don't want to live like this anymore. The mental turmoil for me was just maddening. Like I'm just like, I don't want to keep feeling and living like this. And so after that, that's when I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I'm going to walk away from this situation again, but this time for the right reasons, to try to better myself and make sure I can live on my own. I don't need a man in my life to live. I can take care of my girls. I can support my family. And that became a big priority.
Once you made that decision to shift, how did you begin your journey toward the work you're doing now, like to where you got to the hospital and the mindset that you have now?
My friends. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today without my friends. I mean, and you're one of them. Just being able to, and my sister, my sister's always been a good staple. But I think having people actually give me the reality perspective, because I still had that Gretchen brain that, thought, yeah, this is so shiny and pretty, and I just want to keep playing with it. Why can't I keep playing with it? But it really wasn't shiny and pretty, and the reality of that was Gretchen made it shiny and pretty, but it wasn't. And so I think having people that could ground me back in that reality box, my friends were my biggest help in that aspect. I mean, just and the friends that aren't just let's go out and party and have fun times, real life friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to acknowledge that community and who we associate with, the power of that
Yeah.
in our lives.
That's
And so I
huge.
think it's awesome that you found friendships and relationships that encouraged you to change. What would you say was the first step, like the first big step where you were like, I'm actually moving in this new direction? And did you face any new challenges as you were going through that?
Moving out, I'd had one more relationship, and a gentleman that was my best friend, a guy best friend, moved in with him. And when I moved out of his house, I'm like, this I had to be on my own. Like, I wanted to be in my own place with my own things. And I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to look back at any more failed relationships. I didn't want to look back at, you know, the thoughts that I was having. And I'm still working on it today. Like, I still struggle with, certain things. And, I might have an expectation of something, but I don't vocal it very well. So little things that still kind of linger for me, I'm still working on it today. But after I left that situation and moved in and started living on my own, I made it, that was just that my mental health just became important to me. I mean, mental and physical. So I put them hand in hand. And I still didn't, I still needed a lot of help, if that makes sense. I mean, professionally, as well. So I think just if I would have stayed with counseling and my counselor hadn't moved, I probably would have been a lot farther along than I am today. Anything, I mean, I think the cause for me is something I've always, I told Araceli after got pregnant at 18. I mean, I was pregnant at 17, but I had her at 18. When I got pregnant so young, I always wanted to be an advocate for other kids. I mean, I was still a kid. I shouldn't say single, but other kids. And I always wanted to, talk to them and tell them, I was so lucky. I mean, I was so lucky to be able to raise my daughter at such a young age, not gracefully, not good, but scars, in her life. But I feel like sharing my story and you girls just being the advocates for people, and hopefully my story helps somebody. Like, that's just something I hope that it continues to impact many women's lives, and shows women that you don't have to be strong physically or mentally really either. You just have to have that courage and take that step, and faith. I mean, I'm a strong believer in faith. I know, not everybody does, but that's something that I truly believe has really helped me, just to believe that I can do it, because fear is so consuming. Fear consumes everything in my life.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. So take us back and tell us a little bit more about like what you had to overcome to get to where you are.
Oh, that's good. I don't even know even really where to start. Back when my natural father abused us, or me, I have an identical twin sister, so there was no abuse to her. And I carried that around until we were 9. And I'd had a best friend in school that I told, and I didn't even tell my sister. And so when I did tell my sister, we sat down with my mom, and then that's when that initiated all the legal, to where who I call my dad now is now my legal dad. And, he adopted us, and then my natural father is no longer in our lives. And so, that was a good step. But when my father that I call dad now came in, he's a very strict parent. I mean, very strict. Like, everything had to be not perfect, but I felt like it had to be perfect. And so I hated him. I mean, I absolutely grew a hatred for him because he came into our lives. He took my mom away, and there's all these rules. But I look back at it when I was in my 30s, and I'm like, thank you for coming in and taking on 2 teenagers that were rebels. I mean, we were horrible kids. I can't imagine being a parent now, being in his shoes. So I was grateful that he came into our lives. Well, I wasn't then, I am now. And when I left at 17, I mean, I was barefoot. That's how angry I was. We lived out of town, and I walked all the way in town barefooted. Like, I wanted out. And that's probably how I've always lived my life. There's no middle, Gretchen. It's one extreme to another, whether it was a good decision or not. So that's kind of how I carried the rest of my life through. If I got into a situation, well, like I said, I ran instead of facing. And that's probably when, again, that was the decision that I made with my youngest daughter's dad. I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to face things head on. And it may hurt. It may make me sad. But I'd rather face it and know what's in front of me instead of running away from it. I want to deal with it. I don't want to keep pretending like it's not there and just keep, brushing it under the rug. Why are you looking at me like that?
No, I love that. And then I love that you said that, you ran and that's how you got away from things. I wanted to kind of touch on the fact that you do run and you are.
Yeah, I'm a runner. Yeah. I mean, that I tell people all the time, it's like such a staple because it really became my therapy. And that's, I truly believe if it wasn't for running, I started running when my oldest daughter was 2. I mean, I'd always ran, even in high school. I was a runner. We did track. But I didn't really run until my oldest daughter was 2 years old. And then I was just like, I can't stop. Like, this is such a release for me to come out here. And it wasn't very far, maybe a mile and a half. I made it to my woohoo. And then the same thing. I mean, it went from 1.5 miles to let's just see how much farther we can go. And I've done it for years. I mean, it's just a part of my life. It's part of how I do handle the stress. That's funny. I never thought about that. I became a runner because I wanted to run.
It's kind of beautiful, though.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone facing a struggle similar to yours who might be feeling unsure of how to make a change?
Good question. Because there's so many factors. I want to say check your surroundings. If you have a really good real life friend, I mean, somebody that that you can tell your deepest, darkest secret and trust and know that they won't hurt you. If you've got somebody that you can trust like that, try to open up to them. And maybe they won't have any answers, but maybe they could give you some guidance as far as like, I still feel like a good counselor, but I'm leery on saying that because there's some that are hard to find. I mean, I've had good and bad experiences with them. And and family members, I'm a little hesitant to say too, because we all have those family members too. But I will say whatever person, whether it's male, female, that you feel safe with, that you can tell your deepest, darkest secrets to, and that will actually be by your side no matter what you go through. Use that person as your tool to help you. Just somebody that can be your rock.
I love that. Again, it kind of goes back to the power of our community and our associations.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. So back to you, though, what personal qualities do you think were essential for overcoming those obstacles? And how do you think other people can cultivate similar qualities in their own lives?
Again, I still go back to faith. I didn't really know how much and this may sound bad for some, but I mean, it's my belief. I mean, I look back, especially now, because I'm going back through and I opened up a workbook, The Courage to Heal, and I've been going back through that workbook. So that's another tool that I use. So any kind of tools, if you're a reader or a book or anything like that, I think those are good also for you to use. Of course, obviously this podcast is huge, but my faith, it's become really outward for me now. But it gives me the confidence, and I always feel like, again, I hope this doesn't sound cheesy, but again, it's my belief, but the good Lord above is my Father. And I have this little visual always that I use in my head when I'm just having a bad day or a Gretchen day, as I call them, like, dang it, I really wanted to be a little bit better with my words or a little bit more kind. And I see this little Gretchen that's sitting next to our good Lord. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking out in this beautiful field, and I just like this peace just comes over me. And I'm like, okay, I feel good. Now really think about what's really the root of this emotion that you're having, and then see what it's about. Like for me, like I said, fear, I can't believe how much fear has consumed me. Did that make sense too?
Yes. Beautiful. So, looking back, is there anything you wish you had known earlier in your journey that might help someone else on a similar path?
Repeating the same history. I mean, if you feel like that you're turning a different page, but you still have the same story, then that's probably a sign that something needs to change within you. Whether, it's circumstantial or it's a choice, hopefully not a circumstance, but I don't even know where I was going to go with that. Now I lost it. It was really good wherever I was going.
I love that. So you probably know in the black is kind of that financial term for being in a positive place. And so that's why we named the podcast what we did. So for you personally, what does being in the black mean to you in your life?
Right now, I mean, where I feel I am today, and being in the black is I'm more at peace with it. It's not a turmoil for me. It doesn't feel like, I mean, I still have my inner child where I feel like there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm better with those thoughts when I have them, and I don't feel like everything just has to be perfect now. I still have those moments where I want things to be a certain way and I strive for that, but I'm more relaxed with it. I'm not so just like it consumes me, and then I feel like a failure because I didn't do it good enough. And so my little and sharing my story, that's the other thing, being able to share it and hopefully help somebody. So to me, it's like a little black box, and it's just sitting over on its little shelf. It hasn't gone away. It's still there.
What's next on your journey? Where do you see yourself?
I want to be more kind. I want to be more loving. I don't want to be afraid of. I'm a perfect example. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. He's a great, loving, kind man. Like, I mean, I call him my happy dog. Like every time I would come home, he was just so excited to see me. And now he comes home, he's like so excited to see me. And I'm like, oh, your energy level is way higher than mine. But he's my happy dog. I mean, he's just, and again, I forgot where I was going with that. But that for me is, I want to be that person. I want to be somebody's happy dog. I want to just spread joy and light and kindness and goodness, because there's just not enough of it.
That's really beautiful. That's kind of, I started my art for the exact same reason. And so I think it's really cool that you said almost identical words to what I said when I started. I was like, I just want to be a happy place for people.
Yeah, I do. I mean, we beat ourselves up so much, and we can do it just in an instant. I mean, it just takes one word or one bad thing, and it's like, and it's just no.
Yeah.
No, I want to just turn that frown upside down and be like, you idiot. In a positive way.
Yeah, I think that it has been amazing listening to you today. Obviously, you've learned a lot through the years and through what you've overcome. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us as well. I hope today's story left you feeling inspired and reminded of the incredible strength that lies within each of us. Gretchen has taken her toughest challenges and transformed them into something beautiful, showing us all that even in the darkest moments, there is a way to bring light to the world.
Yes.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe and share In the Black with another woman who could use a little encouragement. Together, we're building a community of passion, purpose, and power. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and remember your story matters. Your choices change things. And being your most authentic self can and will change the world around you.